Welcome to the Planning Your Summer Food Service Program Meal Service Training for the Summer Food Service Program, SFSP. This training is hosted by the Oklahoma State Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, referred to in this training as the state agency, SA. During the training, when directed to the web page, this will always refer to the OSDE SFSP web page at sde.ok.gov/sde/summerfood, unless otherwise specified. In this training, we will review information on different methods to provide meals, meal pattern requirements for the meals you serve, what to do with leftovers, meal service requirements, and food safety rules. Before the SA approves the program application, a sponsor will have to indicate the method it will use to provide meals to children. Several factors, such as the cost of food, the number of meals required, the type of meal service, the number and type of sites, community dietary preferences, and the facilities available at each site will influence the sponsor's choice. Sponsors may choose from several methods for providing meals. Sponsors may prepare and assemble their own meals, obtain meals from a school food authority, or obtain meals from a food service management company. Many sponsors choose to prepare their own meals, which provides them with maximum control over the quality of preparation. Depending on the facilities available at its sites, a sponsor may prepare meals at each site location or at a central kitchen. Preparing meals at the site requires that each site have adequate kitchen and storage facilities. Sponsors preparing meals at a central kitchen must decide how to distribute the meals from the central kitchen to the sites and safely deliver and store them until meal service. This plan must be submitted to the SA for approval. If sponsors choose not to prepare meals for sites, they may enter an agreement to purchase meals from a school food service facility. Most schools have meal preparation and service facilities since they serve meals to children during the school year. Also, experienced school food service personnel are often available for summer jobs. Sponsors that wish to obtain SFSP meals from a school should contact the local school superintendent or the principals of local nonprofit private schools. School Food Authority sponsors who participate in the National School Lunch Program or School Breakfast Program at any time during the year may substitute the meal pattern requirements of the NSLP and SBP for the SFSP meal pattern requirements for meals served at school sites. The SA's approval of this substitution is not required. However, meals served at non-school sites using the NSLP or SBP meal pattern requirements by an SFA sponsor requires SA approval. If a non-SFA sponsor purchasing meals from an SFA wishes to substitute the meal pattern requirements of the NSLP and SFP for the SFSP meal pattern requirements, a formal request for permission must be submitted to the SA along with the application for program participation. Such an arrangement will require either a written agreement or a contract between the sponsor and the SFA. In the SFSP, the term Food Service Management Company is defined slightly differently than in the other child nutrition programs. In SFSP, this means any commercial enterprise or nonprofit organization with which a sponsor may contract for preparing unitized meals, with or without milk, for use in the program, or for managing a sponsor's food service operations in accordance with the limitations set forth in the program regulations on management responsibilities of sponsors. All SFSP sponsors may choose to contract with a food service management company or with a school to obtain their meals. Generally, sponsors may not contract with a school using a food service management company unless the school's request for proposal, invitation for bid, and the contract with the food service management company included the provision of SFSP meals. Please contact the SA with questions. FSMCs and SFAs contracting to prepare SFSP meals must provide unitized meals to the sponsor's site unless the SA has approved a waiver of the unitized meal requirement. The unitized meal requirement specifies that the meal components, except milk or juice, must be packaged, delivered, and served as a unit. Milk or juice, which may be packaged and provided separately, must be served with the meal, and only such complete meals are reimbursable. Sponsors eligible to receive United States Department of Agriculture foods under the SFSP include sponsors preparing meals on-site or at a central kitchen, sponsors purchasing meals from an SFA that participates in the NSLP, and SFA sponsors that produce their FSSP meals from the same food service management company that competitively provided their most recent NSLP and/or SBP meals. The Oklahoma Department of Human Services will provide information about currently available commodities to all eligible sponsors. Serving local foods can improve meal quality and appeal. Sponsors can purchase local foods direct from farmers, from FSMC, from food hubs, farmers markets, community-supported agriculture, and school or community gardens. For more information, please see the local procurement in the administrative guide and visit USDA's Farm to Summer website, http://www.fns.usda.gov/farm-to-school/farm-summer. Meal services can be operated by different sponsors at a site. However, the site may not exceed the maximum number of meals allowed under the regulations. For example, if a sponsor is approved to serve only lunch at a site, a different sponsor may be approved to serve breakfast or a snack at the same site, as long as the total number and type of meal services served at the site do not exceed the maximum allowed under the regulations. Sponsors may serve lunch and either breakfast or a snack. With SA approval, sponsors may serve up to 2 meals or 1 meal and 1 snack each day. Allowable meal combinations include breakfast only, lunch only, lunch and snack, breakfast and lunch, breakfast and supper, snack only, supper only, breakfast and snack, supper and snack, 2 snacks. With SA approval, camp or migrant site sponsors may serve up to 3 meals each day or 2 meals and 1 snack. Allowable meal combinations include breakfast, lunch, and supper, breakfast, lunch, and snack, lunch, supper, and snack. Any combination of meals or snacks that is less than the maximum number allowed. The most important for a successful SFSP is to serve nutritious meals that meet meal pattern requirements and are appetizing to children. Careful menu planning is necessary to meet this goal. The meal pattern requirements assure well-balanced meals that supply the kinds and amounts of foods that children require to help meet their nutrient and energy needs. The meal patterns establish the minimum portions of the various meal components that must be served to each child in order for the participating sponsor to receive reimbursement for each meal. You can find the SFSP meal pattern on the web page under Resources. For a breakfast to be a reimbursable meal, it must contain 1 serving of milk, 1 serving of a vegetable or fruit or full-strength juice, and 1 serving of grain or bread with 1 serving of meat or meat alternate optional. For a lunch or supper to be a reimbursable meal, it must contain 1 serving of milk, 2 or more servings of vegetables and/or fruits, 1 serving of grain or bread, and 1 serving of meat or meat alternate optional. For a snack to be a reimbursable meal, it must contain 2 food items. Each item must be from a different food component. However, juice cannot be served when milk is served as the only other component. Sponsors are not required to accommodate dietary preferences but are encouraged to do so within the existing meal patterns. However, sponsors are required to make substitutions or modifications to the meal patterns for participants with disabilities who are unable to consume the regular program meals when such substitutions are supported by a statement from a recognized medical authority that includes the required alternate foods. Additionally, substitutions may be made if individual children are unable, because of medical or other special dietary needs, not disabilities, to consume the foods required by the meal patterns. Such substitutions may be made only when supported by a statement from a recognized medical authority that includes recommended alternate foods. Schools participating in SFSP or the Seamless Summer Option may offer a non-dairy milk substitute to a student with a medical or special dietary need other than a disability. Schools choosing to offer this option must follow a parent's request to have the milk substitute served to his or her child. Schools must receive a written request from a medical authority or parent or guardian that identifies the student's medical or dietary reason for needing a milk substitute. Any reasonable reason for requesting that a milk substitute be served will be acceptable. Only milk substitutes that meet USDA's nutrient requirements may be served in order to receive reimbursements for these meals. Schools that decide not to offer milk substitutions for children with medical or special dietary needs must communicate this decision to all households. SFSP sponsors may be approved in certain cases to serve meals that meet the meal pattern requirements of other child nutrition programs. Because an infant's first-year dietary needs are based on individual development and may be more complicated than those for toddlers and older children, sponsors must receive prior approval from SA to serve meals to infants 1 year of age and younger. All meals served to infants must comply with infant meal pattern requirements of the CACFP regulations. The meal patterns specify the minimum portion of each food component for each meal or snack. SFSP regulations allow for the adjusting of meal portion sizes for children aged 1 to 6 years old. The sponsor must demonstrate to the SA that it can control portion sizes and follow the age-appropriate meal pattern requirements for children. Because teenagers have greater food needs, sponsors may serve adult-sized portions to children aged 12 to 18 years old. Also, as a reminder, extra food may always be served to improve the nutrition of participating children. That is, in addition to the food necessary to meet the meal pattern requirements. Schools participating in NSLP or SBP are accustomed to preparing meals that meet federal nutritional requirements. Sponsors serving meals that are prepared in schools may, with prior SA approval, use the meal requirements of those programs instead of the SFSP meal patterns. SFA sponsors may use the meal requirements of the NSLP or SBP instead of the SFSP meal patterns without obtaining SA approval. Offer versus serve, OVS, is a concept that applies to menu planning and meal service, which allows children to decline some of the food offered in a reimbursable breakfast, lunch, or supper, excluding snacks. The goals of OVS are to simplify program administration and reduce food waste and costs while maintaining the nutritional integrity of the FSSP meal that is served. SFSP regulations indicate that OVS is available only to school sponsors. For a meal to be eligible for reimbursement, all food components in the required minimum serving sizes must be offered. A food component is one of the food groups that comprise a reimbursable meal. Sites must always offer all the food components that comprise a reimbursable meal in at least the minimum required amounts. A food item is a specific food offered within the food components comprising the reimbursable meal. For example, separate 1/2 cup servings of peaches and pears are 2 food items that comprise one component, the fruit and vegetable component. Schools participating in SFSP and electing to follow the FSSP meal patterns are required to follow the FSSP OVS requirements. Due to the distinguishing nature of the SFSP and NSLP, including variations in settings and resources, the OVS requirements in SFSP are different from the OVS requirements in NSLP. In order to ensure that children are receiving enough food to meet their nutritional needs, OVS requirements in SFSP are as follows. Breakfast. The following 4 food items must be offered through at least 4 different food items as follows. 1 serving of fruit or vegetable, 1 serving of bread or bread alternate, 1 serving of fluid milk, 1 additional serving of fruit or vegetable, bread or bread alternate, or a serving of meat or meat alternate. All of the food items offered must be different from each other. The child must take at least 3 of any of the 4 food items offered. Lunch or supper. The following 4 food components through at least 5 different food items. 1 serving of meat or meat alternate, 2 servings of fruit and or vegetables, 2 different food items, 1 serving of bread or bread alternate, 1 serving of fluid milk. Lunch or supper OVS requirements differ from breakfast in that a child must take at least 3 food components, not items, listed from the 5 listed food items offered. 3 food components are required for an adequate nutritious meal for children. Offering 2 servings of the same food item is not permissible under OVS in SFSP. All food items offered must be different from each other. For example, a breakfast menu that includes a serving of milk, a serving of fruit, and 2 servings of toast is not a reimbursable meal under OVS in SFSP because the toast is 2 of the same food item. Additionally, a larger food item that is worth 2 servings in weight, such as a 2-ounce muffin, counts as only 1 food item under OVS in SFSP, not 2. Offering different food items supports and encourages the practice of offering a variety of food choices for children, which increases the likelihood that children will select foods they prefer and reduces waste. School sponsors that elect to use the NSLP or School Breakfast Program SBP meal pattern and SFA's operating SSO are required to follow the OVS requirements of NSLP and SBP. All sponsors must plan, prepare, and order meals with the objective of providing 1 meal per child at each meal service. And all sponsors must ensure that entire meals and food components are not often left over and unusable. Sponsors should minimize the amount of waste and unusable leftovers. Some suggestions for avoiding loss, or at least reducing the amount of loss, are: sponsors should be monitoring site reports on the number of attending children and the number of delivered meals to reduce waste and cost. A limited number of second meals served as a unit can be claimed for reimbursement, as long as the total number of second meals does not exceed 2% of the first meals served by the sponsor for all sites during the claiming period. Extra meals can be transferred, if allowed by the local health code, from a site with too many meals to a site with a shortage, keeping in mind that meals in excess of the receiving site's approval meal level are not reimbursable. Sponsors may designate a sharing table or stations where children may return whole items that they choose not to eat, provided that this is in compliance with local and state health and safety codes. These items are then available to other children who may want additional helpings. This practice may be facilitated by serving meal components so that they can be easily recycled. For example, if sandwich halves are wrapped separately, a child can return an uneaten half to the sharing table. Please check with your local health department or food service codes regarding sharing tables. Where equipment is available, complete meals and non-perishable components that remain on a sharing table can be stored under refrigeration for subsequent service. Please note that all recycled food items must be stored in accordance with local health codes and must be documented. The form of the food should be suitable to the age of the children so it can be easily consumed within the meal service period. For example, if fruit is cut into smaller pieces, it is easier for young children to eat. Keep in mind that the safety of the leftover meals must be maintained. Meals or components that are transported or shared must be kept in compliance with all local health and safety standards. When reusing leftovers or storing food is not feasible, FNS encourages sponsors to consider donating it to nonprofit organizations working to address hunger in the community, such as homeless shelters, food banks, and food pantries. Sponsors also may choose to send leftover meals or food home with children. Sponsor policies relating to food donations must comply with state and local health and sanitation codes. Although donated meals, including non-reimbursable meals or meal components sent home with children, may not be claimed for reimbursement in the SFSP, food donation avoids unnecessary waste and can save expensive disposal and storage costs. Additionally, by collaborating with other hunger organizations, sponsors can expand the reach of these important programs and build networks that better serve the community. As a result of the Department's Food Recovery and Gleaning Initiative of 1997, a best practice manual was created which highlighted measures to provide unused food to needy organizations. In addition, the Let's Glean Toolkit was developed as a resource guide on food recovery programs for businesses, community-based organizations, private citizens, and public officials, and describes some of the food recovery activities taking place at that time and suggestions for new efforts. These publications can be found on the webpage under Resources. If a site chooses to purchase additional food with SFSP funds, the food must be a creditable food under the meal pattern requirements. Expenditures for foods that may not be served as part of the reimbursable meal based on the SFSP meal patterns are not allowable costs. Condiments served with a creditable food are exempt from this restriction. Sites wishing to serve additional foods that do not meet SFSP meal pattern standards must use non-program funds. Sites with additional funds available are encouraged to use the funds to improve the reimbursable meals served by using fresher, healthier, more nutritious products, such as fresh fruits and vegetables, lean meats, and unprocessed cheeses, not candy, popsicles, sweet items, etc. In addition to serving meals that meet meal pattern requirements, sponsors must comply with the following rules when serving meals at each of their sites. Serve the same meal to all children. This means all children receive a meal meeting the meal pattern requirements, not that all meals must be identical in every component. Children with disabilities must be accommodated and therefore may not receive the same meal. Except where permitted by the SA, ensure that children eat all meals on site. The SA allows items from the fruit or vegetable component of the meal pattern to be taken off-site. However, sponsors should allow this only at sites where there is enough staff to monitor this practice. Site personnel must supervise all children on the site while they are eating. Ensure that all children in attendance at the site receive one meal before any child is served a complete second meal or any adult meals are served. Adhere to local health and sanitation regulations. Make adequate arrangements for food service during inclement weather if meals are usually served at an outdoor site. This could include an alternate indoor site, a shady spot for hot days, or discontinuation of meal service. If discontinued, sponsor must notify the SA and the public in advance of the meal service. Serve meals during the times of meal service submitted on the site application and approved by the SA. The SA must approve any changes in meal service times. Meals must be consumed on-site in order to be eligible for reimbursement, unless the meal is served on a field trip with proper notification to SA or off-site consumption is otherwise approved by FNS. In extenuating circumstances, sponsors may allow off-site consumption of meals as long as meals taken off-site are not claimed for reimbursement. Failure to meet this congregate feeding requirement results in the disallowance of meals and may lead to a determination of serious deficiency of the sponsor's operation of the program. However, sponsors may allow a child to take one fruit, vegetable, or grain item off-site for later consumption without prior SA approval, provided this is in compliance with state and local health and sanitation codes. The food item taken off-site must be from the child's own meal or left on a share table by another child who did not want it. Sponsors should allow an item to be taken off-site only if they have adequate staffing to properly administer and monitor the site and to ensure that issues, particularly related to food safety and program integrity, do not arise. The SA has been permitted to approve SFSP sponsors to serve suppers in place of lunches in certain circumstances, including where an area is eligible for the program but sites, meal preparation facilities, or staff are not available for a lunch meal service, or an organization has developed late afternoon or evening programs for children in low-income areas to keep them occupied in the summer month, but do not have sufficient resources to provide children with meals. Therefore, the SA may approve a sponsor to serve a supper in place of a lunch when it is feasible and appropriate. Except for camps and migrant sites, sponsors are not allowed to serve a supper and a lunch at the same site. Sponsors have the discretion to serve meals to anyone. However, only meals served to children may be claimed as reimbursable meals. Along with children ages 18 years and younger, SFSP regulations also define children as persons over 18 years of age who are determined by the state or local educational agency or a local public education agency as having a mental or physical disability and who participate during the school year in a public or private nonprofit school program established for the mentally or physically disabled. Therefore, meals served to any person who meets the above definition may be claimed as reimbursable meals. Meals served to adults must be reported differently than those served to children, depending on the classification of the adult served as either a program or a non-program adult. Program adults work directly with the meal service at the site as either volunteers or paid employees. Meals may be served free to adults who meet this definition. These meals may not be claimed as a reimbursable meal, but may be counted as legitimate operating costs. Non-program adults, such as a parent or guardian, do not work in any direct way with the meal service at the site, such as a parent or guardian. Sponsors have the option to serve meals to non-program adults at no charge or charge a fee for the meal. The cost of meals served to non-program adults may be counted as part of the sponsor's operating costs only if the adult pays, or non-program funds cover, the full cost of the meal, and the money received is reported as income to the program. If meals are served to non-program adults, sponsors must either charge the adults at least the full cost of the meal, including food and non-food supplies, labor, and the value of commodities, or use other non-program funds to cover the cost of these meals. When using non-program funds to cover the cost of these meals, the sponsor may include those funds as program income and pay for these meal costs from its nonprofit food service account. Additionally, when a sponsor chooses to serve meals to adults, the following rules must be observed. All children must be fed first. Income from the sale of adult meals and non-program funds used to pay for adult meals must be documented as income to the program to offset documented costs. And meals served to children, including second meals, program adults and non-program adults, must be counted and recorded separately on the daily meal count form. The calculation of meal costs should be based on the full cost of producing the meal, i.e., food, supplies, labor, and other costs incurred by the sponsor. Sponsors also should include the value of the USDA foods used to prepare the meal. or this value may be based on the current year annual entitlement per meal value of USDA foods. Serving family-style meals can help children develop good eating habits through the personal example provided by supervising adults. Camp and closed enrolled sites offer the best setting for implementing family-style meals, provided that adults are available to assist children during the meal and staff and children are together for an extended period of time to provide a relaxed, stable environment conducive for teaching good eating habits. Family-style meal service should not be used at other types of sites. If a family-style service is allowed by the SA at camp and closed enrolled sites, sponsors must ensure the following. A sufficient amount of food must be placed on each table to provide the required portions of each of the food components for all children at the table and to accommodate program adults supervising the meal service if they eat with the children. Children are allowed the choice in selecting foods and the size of the initial serving. Children should initially be offered the full required portion of each meal component. When a child does not initially accept the full required portion of a meal component, the supervising adults are responsible for actively encouraging each child to accept the service of the full required portion for each food component of the meal pattern. For example, if a child initially refuses a food component or initially does not take the full required portion of a meal component, the supervising adult should offer the food component to the child again. Although formal approval of alternative meal service is not a federal requirement, sponsors must inform the SA whenever field trips that may affect the time or location of the meal service are planned. Sponsors also are advised to notify the food service vendor in advance of any trips, if applicable. Sponsors may provide a calendar of scheduled trips with the program application if trips are scheduled in advance. Furthermore, sponsors should notify the SA of any changes, additions, and/or cancellations to scheduled field trips. If the SA is not notified prior to the field trip, meals served may be considered consumed off-site and may not be reimbursed. Sponsors serving meals off-site also must carefully ensure the safety and quality of the meals by using adequate storage equipment to transport them. Sponsors must establish meal times for each site and provide this information to SA. Therefore, when applying to participate in the program or providing annual updates to program information, sponsors must provide the SA with the times of the meal service at each site, but are not required to ensure that specific time periods elapse between the meal services. In addition, all sites participating in the program must arrange for delivery if the meals are not prepared at the site, and arrange for storing the meals according to standards prescribed by local health authorities until mealtime. If the meals are not prepared on site, the SA will not approve meal service at that site unless either meals can be delivered no more than 1 hour before the beginning of the meal service, or proper facilities exist on site for storing the food. If you have any questions, please contact the SA office at 405-521-3327. Thank you for participating in the Planning the Program Meal Service training for Summer Food Service Program.